Welcome to End of Life University on YouTube. Today I'm sharing with you an interview I did with Star Bradbury. She is an aging life care specialist who helps people navigate senior living and senior health care. And she's also the author of the book, Successfully Navigating Your Parents' Senior Years. Critical information to maximize their independence and make sure they get the care they need. An excellent book. So I highly recommend this interview and also the book if you're interested in that. So take a listen. And remember to subscribe to this channel down below if you haven't already. Also, subscribe and leave a rating and review for the podcast wherever you happen to listen. If you're so inclined and able to make a small contribution, you can help keep this channel and the podcast on the air by going to eoluniversity.com/support. There you'll find 3 different ways you can make a small contribution that will make a big difference. So thanks in advance if you decide to do that. And we'll move on now with my conversation with Star Bradbury. Today, I'm very happy to welcome my guest, Star Bradbury. Star is an aging life care specialist and the CEO of Senior Living Strategies, who has helped thousands of families make educated and informed decisions as they navigate the world of senior living and senior health care. She has 25 years of experience in the industry and is the founder of Senior Living Strategies and an aging life care expert. She specializes in developing resilient and flexible plans that promote independence and focuses on optimal quality of life for elders. Star is the author of Successfully Navigating Your Parents' Senior Years, Critical Information to Maximize Their Independence and Make Sure They Get the Care They Need. And we're going to be talking all about the book and really tapping into Star's wisdom today. And you can learn more about all of her work and the book at her website, which is starbradbury.com. So Star, thanks for joining me here today.
Thanks, Karen. It's really a pleasure to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
You're so welcome. I really enjoyed reading your book, and I feel like it's such a valuable asset, really, for people trying to help their parents navigate the end of life. But even for me, as I'm looking at my own end of life and trying to see it through my children's eyes and how that might look to them, it's been really helpful for me to kind of get my thoughts in order about, over the next 10 years or so, things I might need to focus on and things that we need to take care of.
Well, that's really why I wrote the book, because I felt that I had learned so much by working in the senior living industry for so long that I had an insider's perspective that I hadn't seen shared in other books similar to mine on the market, because my background wasn't strictly as an RN or strictly from the medical case management, but more from the administrative side and working for many, many years in assisted living and running assisted living, memory care, and then in a life care community. I had a really broad perspective to draw on. And I thought, gosh, if I take the time to write the book, I can help people make informed, educated decisions, because that's hard to do in today's world. It's complex.
It really
Senior
is.
care and senior living is a very complex world.
It's so true. And the advice you give, it's really on a practical level. It's really tools and ways of looking at things and thinking about issues that can really help people just day to day actually navigate this process. And I loved that you start with what you call principle number 1, which is to maximize and prolong our parents' independence as they age. I love that as like a mission statement or a vision statement for all the planning that we do. If we think of it in those terms, our goal is, how can we maximize our parents' independence as they age? It seems like
that is my like bandstand core principle that I realized if I gave readers and families something as simple as this principle, but they really understood how to carry that principle through to so many different stages of someone's own life or their parents' life, and they it would make a tremendous difference. That's why throughout the book, I incorporated the imaginary family, the Spencers, so that readers could actually see this is not just a conceptual principle. This is a principle, if you remember it and apply it, will help you truly make educated decisions. Because really, what can everybody agree on, Karen? Everybody can agree that they want to be independent for as long as possible. Even resistant parents, or even an 85-year-old mom who's determined to stay at home and doesn't want to move anywhere, but she also may not want any help at all, when clearly she is at a point, I'm just making the story up, but needing help. If you approached it from the point of view of maximizing your mom's independence, or your dad's, or really any loved one you're in a caregiving role for, an advisory role, no matter what, you're going to find agreement on that.
That is so,
Independence, maintaining your independence. And it's a
yeah,
point to jump off from.
it's so true, and a point you can return back to. So anytime you get lost in all the details and the decisions you're trying to make, or you run into conflicts with other family members, you can return to that point. Wait, our goal here is to
Right.
maximize independence for our parents. You return to that point, and then you can kind of start over again as you look at each area.
And if you don't mind, what I'd like to do is kind of throw out some really different examples here where you could actually apply that principle. So
Yes.
picking up on the resistant person, mom, dad, your auntie, who says, I don't need any help, but it's clear that they do. I would begin that conversation by saying, Mom, I know that you want to stay in your home and stay independent in your home for as long as possible. That's a question where you're 99.999% sure you're going to get an affirmative answer to. So and you have to be gentle, because I've learned from my own experience from helping families and my own parents. The next question might be, well, I wonder if you had somebody helping you, maybe even only 2 to 3 mornings a week. So that took the burden of whatever, shopping, cleaning the house, making some meals and leaving them in the freezer or in the refrigerator, helping you run errands, especially if you're not driving. Can you see, Mom, that would actually help you successfully stay independent in your home longer? Because I can see that it's getting to be a little too much. And can we talk about how we could find the right person that you would be happy with, that could help you in that way and maximize your independence for longer instead of waiting for a crisis? So now you've got some agreement and you're heading down the path of maximizing independence. So that is a very typical scenario where you've got someone typically living alone, or even if you have a couple where the caregiver is getting pretty worn out caring for their spouse or their partner, and they're also resistant to help.
Mm-hmm.
I can do this. I can manage. I don't need anyone's help. Same approach.
I love that. I love just modeling how to talk to parents about these issues.
It's hard.
I was just watching a series called Shrinking, and
I haven't seen that yet.
there's an older man with Parkinson's disease, and his daughter flies across the country to tell him that she's decided he needs to move into their guest house so she can take care of him as he gets older.
Boy.
And I thought, oh no, she should have read Star's book, because she basically made every mistake we could possibly make in trying to approach our parents.
I warn children, do not be helicopter adult children trying to take over and managing your parents. They're going to be resistant about that. And that's why one of the reasons I just had this conversation with a friend earlier this morning, and I talk about this in the book. You would think that as your parents get older, that they would be more willing to have truly open conversations with you about planning to age successfully and what their plan is, and do they want to age in place and stay in their home? Are they considering moving? Are they looking at a retirement community with a lot of services and amenities? But the fact is, at least based on my experience, Karen, is that is not true. The older people get, the less open they are to major changes, the harder those changes become, even to discuss them, which is why I say in my book, the time to start talking to your parents about this sort of general thinking and opening the door to this kind of communication is when they're in their 60s. And people usually go, really? Isn't that young? No, it's not too young. And it shows your parents that you are interested, you're thinking ahead. And when I say having a conversation, you don't start out by saying, oh my God, when you need care, how are you going to pay for that long-term care? No. Now, I mean, that I'm sort of joking, but the questions I outline in the book are very, very open-ended, general, inquisitive, with the assumption you're going to do a lot of listening and actually ask your parents, have you thought about what you might want to do when you retire? They haven't even retired yet. Are you thinking about staying in Gainesville, Florida, or have you thought about moving closer to me or one of my sister or brother? Are you thinking that you want to move up to New England to be closer to other family, or have you even thought about it? I'm just kind of curious. I'm curious what your thoughts are. Those are super general questions to start with, and they can increase over time, like I model in the book, for things that are far more important, like have you completed any advanced directives? And then you make it about yourself. I am worried. My friend just went through, and this is, I'm modeling now the conversation. You make it about you, not them. You make it about your concern, your own anxiety. Oh, I just read this story about this woman. She didn't have an advanced directive, a living will, and now I think I'm going to do one for myself. And have you done a living will, or do you have you thought about who you might ask to be your healthcare surrogate? My friend's going through this now, and so you kind of bring these conversations forward long before any crisis, before your parents have even retired.
And maybe it's even at a time when you're not necessarily making decisions for anything.
Oh,
You're
not
just
at all.
you're throwing out ideas and considering
Absolutely. You nailed it.
possibilities.
You're just discussing possibilities. There is no decision making really going on. It's just wondering what you're thinking about, what would work best for you. Now, for example, let's say your parents are in a two-story house and all the bedrooms and bathrooms are upstairs. That is not a house that common sense would tell you is necessarily a great house to grow. And I say older, I mean by the time you're in your mid 80s or mid 90s. And by the way, the fastest growing demographic in this country is 90 to 100. And so it's entirely feasible that your parents could be living well into their 80s and 90s, and probably being in a two-story house where you have to go upstairs because that's where the bedrooms are, unless you can modify something. And I've had many clients in my consulting business say, you know what, you're right. I think I'm going to remodel the downstairs bedroom, if they have one, in advance of any crisis, in advance of needing anything. We did the one bathroom upstairs, but not downstairs. I'm going to assume that at one point I might be living downstairs in that bedroom and that bathroom, and I'm going to remodel it now. So part of this discussion is, if you're going to, for example, like 95% of all people want to, Karen, age in place means stay in their home. Well, the first question to ask, is this home going to work for me? As if I'm 90 and I can't go up and down the stairs or easily, course, you might argue that running up and down the stairs will keep you younger, and that's true up to a point. But what if you had hip surgery or knee surgery? Common, and you couldn't even go up and down the stairs for 2 or 3 weeks. Is there something you could do to modify an existing home that's going to make it safer to age in place or more accessible? So there's a lot of ways to bring these ideas up before you're like, gosh, I wish I'd thought about that 6 years ago and modified my bathroom then.
Yeah, exactly. Thinking in advance, just it opens up even more possibilities for us because we're able to consider all sorts of things when we're not in the midst of a crisis and at the moment of need. And I love the term you use, just in time senior planning. And I really love that concept. I think it comes from manufacturing or
It
something,
does.
just in time.
It
But
does.
so talk about that.
Okay.
It's a great way to look at
Well,
it.
yeah, that's principle number 2. Principle number 1 is the maximizing your independence for the absolutely longest possible time and using that as that framework for decision making. And the second principle number 2, there's only 2, is just in time senior planning. Because what I saw people do is feel overwhelmed, Karen, by this imagining as an adult child, oh no, mom just got diagnosed with Alzheimer's, or dad has Parkinson's and mom can't help care for him anymore. And that you sort of go into this, freeze in flight and fear stage and imagine what you're going to do for like 10 years or the rest of their life. And it's unproductive at best and immobilizing. And then people are not making decisions with a clear head. And that's why I came up with this just-in-time senior planning, which says, you know what, concentrate on a 3 to 5 year window. And I learned that because when it comes to seniors, you cannot predict what is going to happen in the 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th year. It will be different. Meaning, just stay focused on maximizing independence for that 3 to 5 year window. And that doesn't mean you're not thinking about a plan B, but you're limiting your focus to coming up with solutions, strategies, suggestions that are appropriate for the immediate to near future.
And that just makes so much sense. I was thinking about how often, like in my line of work, we're emphasizing to people to fill out your advance directives, but we're focusing only on the last months of life.
Right.
There's so much life to live between here and there that maybe that we're starting at the wrong place, because people might be more open to looking at advance directives after they've already done some talking about what about the next 3 to 5 years, and what are some options
Right.
after that. And that maybe we're asking people to jump ahead to the very end of their life, which we know, I mean, could happen at any time. But it makes more sense to be more stepwise about it and just in time in a way, and keep that advanced care planning on the back burner. But maybe there'll be a time when that feels easier to look at because you've already looked at other things first, like
Exactly.
where will you live for now.
Right. And I think that I start out my last section of the book. I mean, it's a big arc. It starts out like, talk to your parents in their 60s and start bringing. I think that if families started having these kind of conversations, again, when there is no decision making required, there is no crisis required. You're kind of hoping to have an open-ended back and forth conversation about the most general things that are going to occur as you age, and not waiting for that crisis. I think that if you build that habit of communication with your parents and your children, as I like to say, listen, I may have written the book for the adult child who might, by the way, I have plenty of friends of mine in their 70s whose parents are still in their 90s. Obviously, that window of time is a little different. The planning is a little different, but I'm continually amazed at the number of people who have parents still living independently, mind you, in their mid-90s. I mean, there's some remarkable mentors out there for all of us in our 60s and 70s. Like, they're doing something right. They're still independent. But I think the important thing is to get into the habit of having these conversations so that it's not suddenly you're saying you're in that, now what do we do stage? Mom can't go home. The discharge planner at the hospital, and this happened all the time when I was running assisted living. Do you have a room at blah 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 assisted living? I just got a call from the discharge planner that they just said mom cannot go home and she's not going to be able to live independently. And what is assisted living anyway?
Oh my gosh.
Are you like skilled nursing? And people just don't know. That's why I said no, skilled nursing is very different than assisted living, especially in today's world. That's why I say, if go and look at these communities now, long before you need them. Find out what's available in your community for yourself or your loved one.
And
Don't
that's such a
wait.
helpful part of the book, that you spend a lot of time differentiating between different types of facilities and kind of giving the pros and cons, because you're right, I've seen the same thing happen over and over. People, they tell me, well, I had 2 days to find a place
Correct.
to take mom, so I looked at two facilities and we just chose the one we liked the best. And
Which, by the way, is not the way to choose a facility, because they could have all the beautiful brand new bling bling and it looks like you walked into a lovely hotel. But that is, while you do want a nice place and you want it to be fresh and clean, there are so many other questions that I list in the book that you should be asking to sort of what I call peel the onion. Who is the company behind this? And one of my insider tips is, in today's world, Karen, there's a lot of corporations, equity firms, and real estate investment trusts who buy out large groups, multiple communities of assisted living, and then they hire a different company to manage it. So you have this big corporation, they're not really involved, they're not too much into patient care. That's not always true, and then they hire a management company. And often what they're trying to do, I'm sad to say, is squeeze the money, maximize the profit, and turn around and sell these again in X number of years. Well, that is not a recipe for success for patients or for
no,
residents.
no,
So
not at
I
all.
tell people, if you're looking for, especially in assisted living and also in skilled, find a community that has a track record. I tell people how to check them out through the oversight agencies online, and also to try to find a community that's both owned and operated and managed by the same company. They
Hmm.
have skin in the game. They are far more committed to patient care because their management reports to, it's one company. It's not all division and separated where nobody seems to be accountable, and they keep passing the buck, and it's possible to find, but you don't want to do that in 2 days.
Oh yeah, so true, so true. And it just makes sense. It could be, I don't know, it could be kind of an interesting little journey when you don't actually need the service, but just to drive around, look at facilities, stop in and ask a few questions and start gathering information, because there's no pressure and you
Correct.
don't need it. You don't have to make a decision, but you're just getting a feel for what's available.
Well, I also take that down to an even deeper level, especially for any of your listeners who might be solo agers. And as I like to point out, people will say to me, I'm particularly concerned, Star, my clients, I don't have any children, and I don't have a partner or spouse. And I always joke, oh, don't worry, you could have kids, and they're not capable of taking care of you for all kinds of reasons. They have their own issues, and there's so many. I'm estranged from my children. They're not talking to me. I'm not talking to them. It's sad, but true. I hear that all the time. Or I love my kids. They love me, but they live in California. I mean, look at me. I'm here in Florida. I have 3 kids. California, LA. I won't be moving there, Jake. Don't worry. Chicago. Mm-mm. Massachusetts. Nope. And they're all very, very, very busy. If I needed help tomorrow, I want to make sure I have a plan for my husband and I, for me, that is not counting on my kids. And so that's really a perspective many, many people our age share. You know, if you're blessed with kids who are close and going to be part of your support team, excellent. And that's the first question I ask, Karen, when I sit down with people to develop a plan to age successfully, my niche in consulting. The first question I ask is, how strong is your support team?
Mm.
How strong is your support team? If you really, really needed help, who is going to be in your town, where you live, in your city, that can actually be there to support you and help you in an ongoing way? And that is becoming increasingly difficult as our families are so spread out.
That's so very true. And well, that brings up to me the issue. I saw this happen in hospice a lot of times when children lived far away from their parents. But I know you have some tips, like how does a concerned child who wants to be involved, how do they
I
manage
do.
that
Yeah, there's
when
a
they
whole, yeah, go on. Sorry.
just when they don't live in the same area? How do they manage it? How do they keep tabs on what's happening for their parents and really assess that?
That is a challenge, and I don't want to minimize that challenge, but I did devote an entire chapter on managing long distance, because the statistics, again, are that so many people live more than an hour or two, if not a coast, like a half a country away.
Yeah.
And so what I tell people is, and I say this in the book, it is not if your parents will need help, it is when.
Hmm.
And the only question mark in that statement is, for how long will they need help? I don't, if as people live longer and longer, and I just said the fastest growing demographic is 90 to 100, there is no way you can get to 95, 98, 99 without some kind of medical crisis. I mean, if we could check the box, and you'll appreciate this, that says, I'm checking right here on this box, on this form that says, I'm going to die in my sleep at 98 and be 100% physically and mentally till the moment I die, we would all be checking that box. But the statistics on people dying in hospitals who said they never wanted to die in a medical institution, they wanted to die in their own bed, or whatever. And let's not even talk about dying. Most people are going to be in and have whatever treatment they need in a hospital and then return home. It is when your parents are going to need care and help, your assistance. And I'm here to tell you that those elders that fare better than their counterparts with no help, because they have an advocate in their family. Now, does it have to be a blood relative? Absolutely not. Does it have to be a child of yours? No, but it has to be someone on your support team who's going to be there to help you. And if you're a long distance adult child who wants to help but will be challenged by that distance, I have this long list of things that you could do. Number one, I would get to know, if your parent says, I'm not moving, I'm not going to move closer to you, and you can't move closer to them, then there's a list of things that you could do, and I'll just throw out a few. I would make a point of learning about all of the resources available in my parents' community. That could be anything from, is there a senior center? Do they provide transportation so that, let's say, because we all know, I mean, I could just go on and on about isolation and loneliness and being alone in a house, especially after COVID. And now you're seeing that happening, and you want your parents to get more involved. So is there a senior center that has free classes all day? We have a fabulous senior center here. They even have provided senior transportation. So that would mean everything from, is there a senior center? Are there volunteer groups who will come and visit? Do they do Meals and Wheels? And is your mom or dad eligible for that? Is there, what is the home care and home health care? Is there a company? You should already have their name and number and have vetted them long before any crisis. So when you get that call, you already know I'm calling blah, blah, blah home care so that there's a companion can start tomorrow. And you need, that your parents' hospitals of choice, their doctors, you have a list of all of their doctors, really, there's a long list, medications they're on. You visited assisted living and skilled care. Now, I'm sure people are going, I'm lucky if I get to visit once a year. And I really want to spend that time with them. But believe me, you will be grateful that you made the time or even did as much as you could online after COVID. A lot of communities still do virtual tours. I'm in LA, but my mom's in Massachusetts. And I wonder if we could do could we set up an appointment to do a virtual tour of your 1-bedroom apartments so I can, it's not easy, but it is possible.
Yeah. I mean, that's a great idea, doing that homework in advance so that you're prepared when you need more services. I know when my mom was kind of in the last 10 years of her life, I was really fortunate. She was friends with a younger woman from her church who my mom had helped her earlier in her life. And she lived nearby. She loved my mom.
Wonderful.
My mom paid her, a little bit here and there. She did the grocery shopping, did the laundry, and just having her come in 2 or 3 days a week changed everything. And she and my mom got along great, whereas my mom and we would be at each other's throats constantly. And it was way better for my mom to have that
What a
person
gift.
helping her than
Mm-hmm.
if I had tried to move there and come in to take care of her and we were
Absolutely.
fighting every day. She had what she needed. Maybe it was kind of just in time care. It was just enough, just what she needed to keep her there on her own. I didn't arrange that. It was because of my mom's own goodness of heart in a way
Well,
that she
that
had
was a blessing,
this
truly a
relationship.
blessing.
It really was. But I saw the power of that. And it was a couple of hours, 3 days a week, but
Right.
it changed everything.
Changed everything. That's what I mean when you have someone who's resistant, if they could just see that letting someone into their home, and it's harder when it's not someone they know that they have a personal relationship with, but it's certainly doable and happens all the time, that it would allow somebody to stay in their home and age successfully in their home with that added help. Because if you took that away, the stress and strain of trying to do things that are a little beyond somebody's capability, either because of mobility issues or see if they had chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, and all of the things that could interfere with someone's ability to easily do the things that one does when you're living alone in your home. Your mom probably did she stay in her home till she passed away?
She
Oh, what a
did. She
gift.
she did, and she had hospice, and they called me when she needed my help, which was 5 days before she died. I came and I
Wow.
stayed with her for 5 days and
People
took
are
care of
listening
her.
to this going, oh, I wish I had somebody like that.
But yeah, it was amazing. I mean, the time I spent with her was really wonderful because we resolved a lot of our issues. We had a wonderful time together, but it played out in the best way it possibly could. She did tell me that she was really glad that she stayed home alone, and she said it was hard, but I made myself get up and get dressed every day, and I cooked breakfast every day, and I made myself wash a few dishes, because she said I knew if I don't stay active and
Right.
keep doing these things, I'll lose my abilities. And she said it was hard, but it was really gratifying, and I'm really glad I did it. And that inspires me so much. I want to
Right.
have that same determination my mom had.
Well, I am swimming upstream a little bit on this topic, meaning that that the majority of people do want to stay in their home and they want to age in place, and they are very resistant to having to move to um, any place really. And usually by the time, as I said, by the time they're becoming more and more resistant, their need for care is increasing, and then it becomes they're afraid, it's fearful, and this is their home, it's been their home for 30, 40 years, and the idea of moving someplace is frightening and unwanted. All the more reason to accept some qualified, wonderful help. Um, but I am swimming upstream a little bit because I've seen so many people become so lonely and isolated in their homes that when they did move into, and in some cases, just what I call a full service retirement community, which I talk about in the book. I'm not talking about 50 plus. Okay. I'm talking about a retirement community that has all kinds of services and amenities built into it, meaning dining, transportation, 24-hour security, fitness centers, wonderful clubs, classes, organizations, millions of things to participate in. I've seen people come alive, Karen, where they made new friends and really had like a whole rejuvenated life. And I have a friend, I'll share this story with you, who's 93, and she is my mentor and one of my best friends. And she truly, I always joke that she could work me under the table, which isn't too much of a joke. She's pretty amazing. And she said, I am going to stay in my home forever and ever. I'm never going to move. And when I really can't manage at all on my own, that's when I've decided, and I've told my daughter, and her daughter's a nurse, I'll move to where she is a couple of hours away. But she's so well known and loved in this community and has given so much back that this is her community. Well, much to my surprise, she called me up last year and said, guess what? I am moving to the Village, which is this full service retirement community. This is after telling me she was never, ever going to go. And she said, I realized that I wasn't ready to leave Gainesville and move closer to her daughter, but I really couldn't manage anymore alone in my home. And I knew, and she's like, I told her, you're my poster child for my principle number one. What decision could I make that will maximize my independence for the longest possible time? Never say never. She was brave enough and courageous enough to say, you know, I am going to move. I'm going to reevaluate everything I said I wouldn't do because I understand that moving to this community means that I won't have to shop. They have 5 restaurants, good food, they have transportation. She decided just within the year to give up driving. But she knew that if she moved to a community where there was transportation, and they have a primary care physician on site if you want him to be your doctor. They have home care on site if you need that. You know, it's a supportive environment that's going to give you all of these services. Why? To allow you to be independent longer.
Exactly.
So I have been on both sides of this. Do I stay in my home or do I consider moving? And I think if you go back to, well, which is going to help me stay independent longer? And it may not be staying in your home unless you have a super strong support system and you are not isolated and lonely. You have friends, you still have connected to the community. That's what's going to keep you, like your mom said, she made herself stay active. So it's how are you going to keep yourself active, involved, connected, and honestly have help in a moment's notice when you need it. In a moment's notice.
Which is such a good point, because it isn't enough that your kids are 2 hours away.
No, it isn't.
You need to have
At
someone
some
you
point.
can call. Yeah.
Now, is it a trade-off? People said, but I love my home. Yeah, I get that. But I saw people who were, I had a friend actually say this to me recently. She said, I just listened to what everybody told me, Star. I just thought that that's what you should do is stay in your home. And she said, I just realized I've been a prisoner in my home. And it was an aha moment for me. And it was a really sad moment for her. Now, is she changing it up? Yes. She's leaving and moving closer to her daughter, to a life care community right near her daughter, because she realized this is not working for me. She was having some major health issues on the young side, but still that doesn't mean you can't be in your 70s and not start having some major health issues. So for her, staying in her home was not working. And she saw that and asked herself, gosh, I got to change things up here if I'm going to have my needs met and try to be as independent as I can. So I want to encourage people to stay open-minded and flexible both from the adult children and the parent side, in terms of, that's why I only stick with that 3 to 5 year window, because I can't tell you the number of times people said, I will never move closer to my kids. I will never move, fill in the blank, to a life care community. I will never. And then you never know. A spouse dies, you have major health issues, you get diagnosed with something that is a heavy load. Things change. People need to give themselves permission to change their minds based on the current events.
That is so true. And that's the beauty of that just in time planning, of only looking at the next 3 to 5 years, because you're acknowledging things will change. Something will be different 3 years from now. And I can't right now know what I will choose or what I will need at that time. I can just look at this period of my life. And so I love that idea. But you also talk about even having a plan B, like for the next 5 years, I'd like to do this, but there's also a plan
Yes.
B, just in
But you
case.
don't have to, like, wrap it up in a bow and sign the contracts. Like I tell people all the time, go visit these communities, these great full service retirement communities, or I'm a big fan of life care communities, and get yourself on a wait list. It might take 5 years, believe it or not, to get into the top best life care communities in the country. Easily take you 5 years. And getting on the wait list is only giving you an option to get the apartment that you want or the home that you want. It doesn't mean you're going to go. And typically, it's some minor amount of money, which they refund to you in full if you don't ever go. So you're saying, well, this is what I'm going to do for 3 to 5 years. But past that, I'm not really sure. And so I'm going to maximize my options and get on wait lists. I had one couple, they were on wait lists in 4 life care communities in 4 different states.
Wow.
Or they had like 4 kids. Well, who knows? Maybe we'll move to Virginia, Tennessee, Michigan, or Texas, or something. It's like, now that I had laughed at them because I thought, well, that is maximizing your options. They accepted that they didn't really know how would they both be together in 5 years. If you lost a spouse, would you make a move that you wouldn't have otherwise? The answer for many people is yes. If you lost your spouse, would you stay in your home? I asked a couple this recently, and they both said for the first time to each other, no, if he goes, I wouldn't stay here. And I asked him, how do you feel? Because nobody talks about this.
That's so true.
Nobody wants to talk about this. And they both went, oh, well, if that's the case, neither one would stay in this beautiful home without their partner, their husband, their wife. Then that indicates another plan B going on. Because 3 to 5 years, definitely, they could stay in this house. They've modified it. They've done everything for the bathrooms. They had some support system. But nobody had talked about, what if one of us is gone? Neither one wanted to stay in the house. So that informed a different kind of thinking for a plan B. No crisis, nothing they had to decide. Now they could begin talking about this over the next few years. Like, okay, well, then what?
It's just so wise. And really, I mean, at least what I believe, it's like the way we should be living anyway, is that we have to always be aware that life changes on a dime, in an instant, and things happen and we don't know what could happen. And we need to be in a place where, like you said, we're open and flexible enough that we can respond to what happens in the moment, and that we've already allowed ourselves to think through some of the scenarios, so it's not so frightening to us.
That's the key, that you've thought through what your options are, and you've talked about it with your kids or kids with their parents. And that's why throughout the book, when the Spencers kind of approach this using these principles, that you see how they make decisions, and how when things don't go the way they thought, they're able now. They've already kind of talked about a plan, changing it up and going from this new circumstances or events that will somewhat shape the decisions that they make. I say in the last section, a prepared exit plan, that we put so much time and energy into living a good life, whatever that might mean to somebody. But I would like to say, and I know from your background, that you should put just as much planning and thought and effort into dying a good death. And that's why I'm a big fan of really asking yourself, what would that look like? How could I shape that? When do you apply the concept of slow medicine? I'm not going to do that treatment. I'm not going to have that surgery. I'm going to focus on my quality of life, even maxing my independence up until the point I leave my body. And that means not turning over the last precious days or weeks of your life to being overtreated medically, or dying in a hospital, or pulling out the stops for treatments that absolutely aren't worth it for the downside of a treatment. And I had two sets of parents, Karen, since my parents divorced when I was in high school. They're all gone, and I've lost a sister and a beloved in-laws. And so both professionally and personally, I've watched so many people walk this walk through life and make so many decisions. And that also informed my last chapter or section of the book. What is, on a very practical level, down to what's a green burial, and how do cremations work, and what is it going to cost, and what about a regular funeral or burial, and dealing with attorneys and end of life issues that nobody wants to think about, and is not fun if you've never done it. And I've been the personal representative or executor for several wills and learned a whole lot. But I'd really like to stress to, especially to the people likely listening to your end of life university, is helping your parents, being their advocate and supporting them, but asking some of the questions that they may not ask themselves when you're visiting with doctors. What are the options, doctor, for this diagnosis? If we take this treatment, what are the downsides of that treatment? What are the results of this treatment, the success rates? If my mom does this surgery, do you think it's going to improve her quality of life? There's a whole list of questions that if someone is in their 80s and they just got the news that they have a really serious diagnosis, they are not going to be thinking about asking. That's when having an advocate, an adult child in those situations can be so important. And again, it can be, like in your mom's case, her friend that she befriended that was there for her, that might have taken her to the doctor and be asking some of these questions. So I'm a big fan of, when is it time to say no? And Dr. Harrington's book that I mentioned, oh, I just love this book. He's a wonderful man who has a similar background to you. He was a hospitalist, worked in the hospital, worked in the ER for years and years, had a private practice and patients. And his book is At Peace, Choosing a Good Death After a Long Life. Dr. Samuel Harrington. It's a wonderful book, and it is completely practical. I mean, when I say practical, Karen, he looks at like the top 10 diseases or illnesses that affect seniors. Congestive heart failure, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, cancer, dementia. And he basically takes these diseases and looks at the arc of these diseases. As a doctor, sharing with families, at what point might you say no to a specific treatment? So, I mean, he's very specific about this in a very practical, helpful way, as well as talking about, like you talk about, the medicalization of death.
Yeah, that's just so very helpful because as you said, in the moment, people don't think of asking about those things. But when we look at how we started this conversation, our mission statement or our vision to maximize independence, that's a great way to look at medical treatments as well. Like, is this treatment going to help me maximize
Right,
independence and quality of life? And
right,
if not, is it worth it? Is that really the direction I want to go?
right. And your just-in-time planning window might be super short, and if your doctor, and doctors hate it, and I get that. I could never be a doctor. I hate it when the patients say, well, how much time do I have? They hate to answer that. And so you've got to be willing to peel the onion, because they'll answer it in different ways without that direct response, because they don't know. I mean, they're going to say, we don't know. We've seen patients with your diagnosis surpass all odds. I have a friend who, by all rights, shouldn't be with us on this planet anymore. And yet she's not only here, still here, but she's doing great. And so no one knows. Okay. On the other hand, you do want to try to get more specific answers to success rates of a dangerous operation. Are you really going to go through a Whipple procedure if you have pancreatic cancer? My answer for me personally, having had dear friends go through this, is absolutely not. No, I would not. That's when I would say, I might do all kinds of other things, but no, I'm not. I'm going to refuse that surgery and start making peace with myself and my family and maximize my quality of life for the time I have left. So as hard as it is to think about it, I've seen people try everything medically. And I think it's such a deeply personal decision that it's not like I have an answer. I don't have an answer. I'm just saying, think about these things. Think about, what would a good death look like to you, and plan for that as much as possible. I always joke, I know a few people who wrote their own obituaries, and I was like, wow, those are type A super planners. Nothing to chance. Here's my obituary. I already wrote it.
Well,
I'm not that bad. Or good, right?
yeah, exactly. Um, I wanted to mention again the title of your book. First of all, you're Star Bradbury, and your book is Successfully Navigating Your Parents' Senior Years, Critical Information to Maximize Their Independence and Make Sure They Get the Care They Need. And I'll say it again that it's really a wonderful book and filled with helpful resources, that some that I haven't really read before. I mean, and I'm thinking I need to give this book to my two children who I don't think they're quite ready to have these conversations with me, but I'm
Right.
going to use the book to do my own kind of planning and thinking through the future, so that when they're at a little different stage of lives, because they're starting their own families right now, which is super busy, they don't need to be thinking about, what, I might have to take care of you someday.
Right, right.
But that
On the other hand, they might be relieved that you're trying to make a plan for yourself too.
yeah, and
But
so to
many
use it
people,
to work
go
on my
ahead.
own planning and my own thinking through these options for the future.
I'm so glad you brought that up, because I've had a few friends say, well, my parent, that, and mind you, they're in their 70s and they're or 60s, and they're saying, well, my parents are long gone, I don't need the book. And I was like, wait a minute. You can read this book, apply it to yourself. And I've had more people at book signings walk up with 5 copies, and they go, yep, I'm buying a copy for myself and my 4 kids. And then I thought, that's a great idea. Give it to your kids, ask them to read it when they have time, and let you know when they finished it. And then that's the perfect time to begin having conversations and open up. And with Zoom, which is the wonderful silver lining of COVID, that everyone uses Zoom now. They're comfortable with Zoom. You could have a family meeting and say, look, I know I'm not going to make any decisions in the next year or two, but can we just start talking about some thoughts I have about moving closer to you, or staying here but modifying my home? And so it's a way to begin a conversation that you want to have before a crisis.
Yes, definitely, definitely. Yeah, and the book, it's really wonderful, a great resource. So I highly recommend it to people. And it just came out in March of this
Yeah,
year. So
yeah,
you'll be, you mentioned you'll be traveling along the East Coast doing some book signings,
I will.
most likely in bookstores. So people can go to starbradbury.com to find out where Star is if you want to get your copy of the book autographed by Star at a book signing.
I always enjoy them. I always meet great people. But
Yeah,
thank
definitely.
thank you. It's been so much fun talking to you, and I
Yeah.
just admire what you're doing and your work, because I'm committed to educating people as well.
Yeah, well, thank you so much. Yeah, your book is already, it's going to be very useful to me, and I'm really grateful to you for that. So, thanks again, and good luck on your, excuse me, good luck on your journey this
Thank
summer.
you.
And
Thank you. I hope
we'll
we
have,
can stay in touch somehow.
yeah,
Yeah,
definitely. I was just going to
you're
say
not
that
on my route.
we'll stay in touch. Yeah, I'll miss the book signing, but
Well,
thank,
thank you. Thank you so much.
thank you, Star. It's been a real pleasure. I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Star Bradbury about her amazing book, which is really a wonderful resource to have. And Star wanted me to mention the Aging Life Care Association. I'll leave a link to the website in the description for this episode. But that's a place you can go if you have an elderly parent in a different community. You can enter their zip code. They'll help you find services that you might need for your parent where they live. And so that's a fantastic resource to know about. So check out the description below this episode. Once again, don't forget to subscribe. And I'll be back next time with another interview for you. So until then, take care. Bye bye.